Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for joining us. The League of Women Voters of Metro Phoenix welcomes you to this very important event. I'm Penny Sharan. I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of Metro Phoenix. I want to set a little context for this event before I turn it over to our fearless Housing Study Committee chair to take it forward. The League of Women Voters of Arizona and the League of Women Voters of Metro Phoenix and the League of Women Voters in general is a nonpartisan organization that neither supports nor opposes any candidates or political parties. However, we are a political organization and we stand rooted in our principles to defend democracy and empower voters. The way the League advocates for many issues in the community is based on a very deliberative and intentional study of the issue. And today, the space you are in is part of the work the League does to study important issues that impact the communities. In April of 2023, the League of Women Voters of Metro Phoenix members approved for a study of a comprehensive public policy on housing. We are here today because of leadership of Betsy Flatten and her committee, who have decided to embark on this deep, deep work, which is imperative that we have in order for us as the League to advocate. The League will not advocate on any issue unless it has studied the position and has a position from which it can advocate. So this work is very, very important for how the League advances democracy in its communities, in the nation. With that being said, I don't want to take any more time, and I would like to turn it over to Betsy Flatten, the chair of the Housing Study Committee for the League of Women Voters of Metro Phoenix. It's part of a broader piece of work that we do called public policy positions. Betsy, thank you for your leadership. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Penny. I'm excited to have, this is our introductory housing study forum, and it's so that we can start becoming prepared to reach consensus on the information that we gather and to determine a public policy position. And so we're going to be learning a lot tonight about why we picked housing. Why is housing an issue that we need to take action on eventually? And I'd like to mention my committee members: Laura Hudson, who is helping tonight; Rivko Knox, who will be introducing Sarah; Vince Cruz, Pike Oliver, and Leslie Hansen, who's a liaison from the advocacy committee, so that we can see how our work can be implemented. And we are hoping that we'll have more members join the study committee, because the more members that take part, the more we'll be eventually able to do. And as a member, if you want to take part in a small way, that's great. You don't have to do the whole study. We're looking for anybody who wants to help. And if you are interested, you can contact me, or you can contact Penny and she will get me the information. So now it is my pleasure to introduce one of our two speakers tonight. I'm going to introduce Katie Gentry, and I learned about Katie Gentry in a variety of ways. I had gone to a study on the website for ASU's Morrison Institute of Public Policy. There is a study on housing, and it's funded by the Arizona Community Foundation, which relates to Sarah. But Katie was a head of the lead research analyst. I was looking for the words on several of the reports, and one was on the legal barriers to adapting affordable housing in the state. And another was about the history of housing policy and discrimination, and also then an interactive story map that we'll be using later in this housing study, and that Katie is quite proud of. Katie she started out as a VISTA volunteer, so what more can I say? And she got her bachelor's degree in chemistry from the University of Denver with minors in psychology, leadership studies, and math. And then she has a master's degree in program evaluation and data analytics from ASU. And she's put that training to good work. I think she started, from what I could tell, as the council aide for one of the mayors of the city of Phoenix a while back. And she was addressing homelessness and other issues affecting veterans. She also worked for the Arizona Housing Coalition. She worked for the city of Chandler and just happened to write a master's thesis about whether or not the community land trust would have an effect on slowing gentrification. And gentrification is an issue we will be addressing in the housing study. And then she worked for the Morrison Institute, and she is now at the Maricopa, I always want to say Metropolitan, Maricopa Association of Governments. She is the Regional Homeless Program Manager. And she and Sarah have worked together, so this was a perfect opportunity. And now, Rivko, if you would introduce Sarah.
I need that little unmute button is always a struggle. So I'm Rivko, and I'm very honored to be able to introduce Sarah Liguori to you. So I'll start with the standard question. Why is Sarah Liguori here, and who is she? Well, of course, she's here because we invited her, but why? I happened to attend about 2 months ago a non-lead meeting at which Sarah made a fabulous presentation about housing. And I was just blown away by how comprehensive yet easy to understand it was. So I contacted her as a member of this housing committee and said, League of Women Voters of Metro Phoenix needs you. And she said yes. Now, more about who is Sarah Liguori. She's a Tucsonian native. I think that's how you pronounce it. She earned her bachelor's degree in economics with a minor in business administration from the University of Arizona. She also studied international studies in business at the Lorenzo de Medici. I think I said that fairly well. University in Florence, Italy. I only took Spanish, not Italian. She currently lives in Central Phoenix with her husband and 2 small boys. They enjoy exploring new parks around the city, stimulating the local economy by going to concerts and local restaurants, most notably the Crescent Ballroom, which has the best of both worlds. I needed some personal stuff, which is how I asked her to send me some information. Favorite trip she's ever taken was to Montreal, and the food she could eat every day is Mexican. So for those who have lived in Arizona for a while, yay. So now, beyond that, currently Sarah is the Arizona Community Foundation's Senior Director on Impact Investing, a job she took, or a professional position, it's more than a job, in October of 2022. She manages the Community Foundation's Impact Investing Program, oversees the Affordable Housing Pre-Development Loan, the Community Impact Loan Fund, and the Arizona Community Foundation USDA Rural Development Loan Fund. Prior to working with the Arizona Community Foundation, Sarah was elected to the Arizona House of Representatives for District 28, the old 28, who've been redistricted, where she served on the Commerce and Government Elections Committees. Before that, she served as the Director of Operations for New Way Development, where she managed infill redevelopment properties in Tucson and Denson, and was a financial advisor for the BMO, Harris Bank, and Northwestern Mutual. She also serves, I don't know how she finds the time, but what the heck. She serves on several community boards and volunteers with Local First Arizona, the Phoenix Art Museum, Women's Art Council, Big Brothers Big Sisters, and the Salvation Army. So if any of you are looking for someone who has a lot of spare time, I recommend you contact Sarah. And with that, I'm going to mute myself, stop my video, and I'm here to listen and learn.
Okay. And I'm going to turn it back over to, Sarah and Katie. But I did forget one little thing about Katie. She started her own organization, and it's called Street Sense Solutions. And I didn't have as much information about what she likes to eat, but I do know she started her own organization, and I know that she's in Portland. So anyway, would you take it over?
Thank you so much. That was a beautiful introduction, and I feel like I learned a lot more about Katie and even myself. So I really appreciate the generosity and setting the stage for us. And I just have to say, I'm very honored to be on this call tonight. When Rivko asked, it was like a immediate responsive yes. I really admire and respect the work that you all do and the League of Women Voters does. And so to be able to have this space and share with you all, it means a lot to me. So thank you for letting us be a part of this conversation. And I hope what we discuss for you, sets the stage for the work that you're about to do, and consider us, partners, Katie and I, from this point forward on answering questions or information or anything we can do to support your work in the housing space. Katie, anything you want to say before I start sharing my screen?
No, I can just say ditto, and I am with Sarah, Mexican all the way.
Yeah. I've tried it one time. I think I went up to like 6 days. Okay, let's jump into this. And everyone can see that okay? Okay. So I'd like to kind of set the tone for today. As I titled this presentation, Arizona 2.0. As Rivko noted, I'm an Arizona native. I grew up in Tucson. I've lived in Phoenix for almost 17 years. And so I've benefited from the beauty of Arizona in not just the way of life, but also the cost of living and the opportunities, and being able to afford a home and kind of go up the housing mobility ladder with ease. From renting, while I was living alone, making minimum wage, to buying a starter home, to buying, a family home. But what I'd like to pivot to now in a sad but good way is, Phoenix we've done a really great job, even as a state, of kind of saying, we can grow bigger, and we've done a really good job in growing better. But those days of what we've been used to, of mobility and cost of living and affordability, are essentially gone. We are now in a new era. And so we can look back on it as we will during this presentation. But I really want everyone to understand that we are in what I call the Arizona 2.0. We have a new level of affordability, of wages, cost of living, and with it come all of the problems of, grown-up problems that now our city faces. So that's just really where I want us to all understand where we're coming from, is we are in a new age here in Arizona. So what we're going to talk through tonight is a couple things. I think it'll touch on a lot of what you're looking to get out of this discussion, is why is housing no longer affordable? So in order to do that, I want to look back on the past. How did we get here? And then we'll talk about where we are now, and we'll dig into the data. And then what are some of the larger, we'll zoom out and we'll get some macro level pictures and look at not just economic effects, but if we don't solve or start to put forward solutions towards this affordability crisis, what does that mean in the long run? And then we'll talk about some real solutions. So I like to start talking about housing by talking about the chicken and the eggs. We all remember not too long ago in 2022 when we went to the grocery store, and the dozen eggs that we bought that used to be, $2.99 was now $5.99, $6.99, $8.99, or gone. The shelves were bare. And what that was due to was because, a huge swath of the hen laying population had avian flu, died. And so therefore the supply of eggs and egg producing hens was gone. So your classic case of supply and demand of a lot of hens were out of the equation. And so therefore supply was down, demand was still up. And therefore as we see barren shelves and we see prices that have doubled and quadrupled overnight. And that is kind of how I like to relate to the housing crisis in the supply and demand. We are undersupplied and therefore, and we have high demand. And therefore that is really what's pushing upward inflection of these prices that we're seeing.
So going to take you a little bit back to how did we get here? I think as Sarah mentioned, we have a huge issue of supply and demand, but this didn't happen overnight. There was a lot of different steps that kind of led to this happening. So the first thing being is we don't have the same workforce that we used to have in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s that we now have. So SB 1070 passed in 2008, which led to a ton of undocumented residents leaving the state. We took a ton of construction related jobs that a lot of undocumented individuals filled, and we've never been able to refill them. And we've not been able to see that same increase in that job income come back. And so in 2017, we still have a 40% job reduction rate. We still have not been able to refill those positions. And that's really led to that kind of deep decrease that you've seen. In orange, you can see that we were overbuilding up to 2008 when the recession hit. We were building higher than our rate of increase when it came to people moving to Maricopa County. But come 2010, we literally dropped in half and have not been able to recover. Even in the 2020s and kind of up to now, we have never been able to recover that growth. And yet we are one of the fastest growing counties in the country. So if you look to the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about that. So we are one of the fastest growing counties in the country. We have 200 new residents a day. And yet, if you think about it, we've now decreased our rate of housing production. So before, when we had enough housing for everybody, that supply and demand was kind of in close proximity to each other. We're now not even able to keep up with the folks that are living here, let alone for the new demand that is coming here. And so it's resulting in a whole lot of people without a place to go, which leads to increased prices because people can get increased prices for that demand. Couple stats for you. We're one of the fastest growing, fifth fastest growing in the country year over year. Our employment growth has estimated 2.3% compared to a national average. Phoenix is trending even higher than that, than the greater state of Arizona. And we're seeing kind of just, we're not able to keep up with the rate of people coming into the county.
And so that leads us all to what I like to visualize as this has been the makings of a perfect storm. On one hand, I think that Arizona is not unique to a lot of the housing challenges we face. This crunch of low supply, high prices, people being priced out of the market, and then increased homelessness population is not particularly unique to Phoenix or our state. It's happening in dozens of states around the country, around the world even. But I think that what we're experiencing here in Arizona, and I'll say Maricopa County specifically, is the makings of this perfect storm. So we've done a really great job on the economic development side. We used to be, and I worked in commercial real estate and land development. Arizona was a real estate state. And what we've done though through the past crashes and the cycles is say, hey, we can't just rely on building and real estate. Let's diversify. And our leaders have done a great job of getting chip conductor plants and the startup community and data warehouses. And so we've diversified, but the negative effect of that is that we now have a ton of big companies and people moving here. And so now we're trying to keep up with the economic development on the housing side. Regulatory barriers, we have, I think it's 75% of our zoning is single family zoning. And so we've been under the mentality of urban sprawl, build out. And I look at it through the lens of, so now, land is becoming scarce and water is becoming scarce. And so now can we go back and look at some of these regulatory zoning issues, and if there are barriers, are we able to change them? Another couple stats for you. So this year, there's 40% fewer homes for sale. So that supply of homes that are even just available to be bought or rented is down. We have NIMBYs. So people that are, and they've gotten very cohesive and collective, and they'll travel around. A NIMBY group from Gilbert might go out to the West Side and, voice their feelings on a project going in there. So these are not even groups that are, necessarily looking in their backyard, but they're able to stop projects around the state in areas that really could use some density or some affordable projects. I talked about urban sprawl. And then now what we're really, really experiencing, even more so than 6 months ago when I created this slide, is that we're seeing everyone's being called stuck, of just 92% of homeowners have less than a 6% mortgage rate. We now know, since I created this, mortgage rates have gone to 7.5. And what that is it's people looking around and saying, why would I trade my 2.5%, 3% to pay more, not just in the home price, but also to pay more now at a higher mortgage rate? So that's another huge chunk of inventory that's just sitting here, that's not in this open flow of the marketplace. And so people don't have a lot of options. Pre-pandemic, starting in about 2018, Maricopa County's, as the last slide said, we've been in the top 5 spots of migration the past 5 or 6 years, but the pandemic really exacerbated that. People being able to leave the cities. I had about 4 or 5 friends from California, from San Francisco, say, I don't want to pay $8,000 a month in rent. I'm going to come, buy a property in Tucson. And so Arizona was very attractive because of the weather and our cost of living. And I think that we were double hit with the migration from the pandemic put upon us, on top of the migration that was already happening. We look at investor-owned properties. We'll jump to STRs first. So about 1.4% of the stock of homes in Arizona is short-term rentals. I believe that's about 70,000. I could be wrong, that they know of. It's not the most trackable. High demand, and then investor-owned properties. So we've had a huge swath of real estate investment trusts and hedge funds and investment companies coming in, again, because Arizona had low prices relative, and it was an opportunity for them to buy low to potentially sell high. Not just in the for sale market, but also in the rental market. And so investor-owned properties, investors out of state, are now almost 25% of what is being sold and who they're renting to. And so where we are now, our rent has increased 70% in Metro Phoenix. We have now prices have not kept up with wages, but what that translates to is you need to earn $33 an hour in order to afford rent in Metro Phoenix. And realistically, we know that is not what a wide swath of people are making. Arizona is now ranked the 4th most undersupplied market in the United States. In 10 years, the prices have more than doubled. And in even just the last 2-year time frame, I go back to, I bought a starter home for $300,000. That same home that I bought for $300,000 could now be sold for $700,000. So it's more than doubled. I would not be able to afford that in times back now. And that's where we're really seeing just sharp and steep increases in a short amount of time that the market and Arizonans have not been able to be kept up with. And what that also translates to is, this is about 2 months ago, a national poll came out, and Phoenix had fallen to 110 of 150 best places to live. And what was really significant in that poll was that a lot of the people had weighed in to say that it's unaffordable. I can't move to Phoenix because I can't afford a home anymore. And to me, as a native, that was really, I never would have thought we would have heard that 3 years ago. So one more slide on the numbers. So what we're looking at right now, going back to that chicken and the eggs, is we are about 270,000 housing units short statewide. So if you want to picture this like a game of musical chairs, and the entire state is playing the game, 270,000 people or families have no opportunity to even find a chair. Greater Phoenix needs about 160,000 of those units. So again, Maricopa County and Phoenix are acutely experiencing this problem, but it's being experienced up north in Flagstaff, all the way down to the border and Yuma. The state is just down in housing units. Single family permits are down, and evictions are up. So evictions have been, growing at about a 20% rate. And one of the alarming stats that I'll touch on here, and then I'll circle back to at the end of the presentation, is that vacancy rates have been about 4% or just under 4%. And one of the metrics for whether a city is at risk or is currently experiencing a chronic level of homelessness, a crisis level, is looking at the vacancy rates. And if those vacancy rates are under 4%, that housing market is so tight that you're at a systemic level of experiencing a homeless crisis.
Diving kind of further into what Sarah talked about as far as that $300,000 starter home that's now become $700,000, it's really led to us just being stuck. So I remember I moved to Arizona in 2016. I came as an AmeriCorps. I was making $908 a month, and my 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment cost me $750, and I had a roommate. So my rent was $375. That same apartment now costs $2,100 a month, just 7 years later. So that is just the epitome of how much people are stuck. They're sliding down the market. They're not even, if they're renting, they're not able to afford their rent anymore. So we have a lot of people on fixed incomes who are resulting in homelessness. And we have folks who are owning their home who aren't able to move up that ladder. They're not able to move from that starter home to the next home and create new starter home opportunities for the new grad or the young family. Instead, they're falling back because our market cannot keep up with what is coming and our income levels. So as Sarah mentioned, we have folks who are moving here from other locations who are coming in with higher incomes. So a lot of the folks who are doing this backward slide are Arizona natives who have been here for years and years and years. It's not the people who are coming here experiencing homelessness for the first time. So as the slide says, we're seeing older adults experiencing homelessness for the first time. They've never experienced it before because their fixed income has always afforded rental or always afforded their mortgage, and they cannot keep up with the increase in taxes and all the different utilities and things like that. So we are seeing folks who have never, first time ever, and also not able to move. They're stuck. And so as kind of this, you always want to be climbing to that next rung of the ladder, but instead we're just watching that slide happen, and that slide happen without even people realizing that slide is happening. And so I guess this, as you can tell, Sarah and I are all about data. In 2019, so just 4 years ago to now, to 2022, 65% of Phoenicians could afford a home. Now only 18% can afford a home. So everything that Sarah talked about, that kind of first-time starter home, that's not possible anymore. I personally bought a home in 2020. I bought a second home in 2023, and my mortgage payments were night and day, even though it was about the same level of house that I was expecting to buy. And so the only way that that is possible is we have roommates, and we've made sacrifices in order to own a home, but that is not practical for a lot of folks who are looking to move into home ownership. And we've seen that slide kind of continue to happen.
And so what we're also seeing here is, I just wanted to put some numbers on screen in real time to kind of digest what it does take to make, an average rent in the cities around us. And the most, I think it talks to exactly what Katie was just mentioning of, 10 years ago, 90% of Phoenix rents were less than $1,000 a month. Mine was $750. And now that is completely flip-flopped. Now less than 9% of rents are less than $1,000 a month. And so that is really epitomizes to me this Arizona 2.0 of we are now this grown-up city, and here's now what we're left with of that affordability that we had in the past, where we could find something for less than $1,000 is now gone. You're lucky if you can find something for less than $1,000. And what that translates to is a higher number of, I mean, I say Phoenicians, but I don't mean it necessarily just for the city, but people in all cities are becoming house burdened. So what that means is if you are spending, you're supposed to spend 30% or less of your income on housing to keep your budget healthy. So you have disposable income, you pay your bills, you're saving, all of that thing. A healthy budget is less than 30% of your income on housing. Right now, what we're seeing in these 6 counties specifically is that more than 40% of renters are house burdened. And a lot of people getting mortgages are now becoming house burdened as well. That number is, I think, in the high 20s, which is higher than it's ever been. So more and more of our neighbors and more people around the state are now spending higher and higher amounts of their income on housing just to put a roof over their head, which means less money for food, less money for education, less money for savings, less money for emergencies. And that's also putting a pressure on the economic security and leading to housing insecurity. As this budget towards housing grows from 30 to 40 to 50% of their budget might be spent on that. So we're really seeing that this is starting to become a problem around the state. And just because I pulled the numbers today, a $2,000 average rent in Scottsdale translates to you need to be making $80,000 a year, roughly, give or take. And the average income in Scottsdale is about $75,000. So I wanted to share that too. Of $2,000 a month means you need to be making $80,000 in order to afford that rent. And I know a lot of our society is not making that. So here's another slide kind of hitting that. And I would tell you, don't worry about squinting or trying to read these exact numbers. Unfortunately, they're all out of date and they need to go up anyways. But what I'd like to show you is the top section is 2020. The bottom is December 2022. And the big difference is the colors. So the green has all gone away. The green was, could you afford to buy a home? So the top income earners, nurses and police officers in 2020, if you were making, $55,000 and over, you could buy a house in almost all of the cities around Metro Phoenix. You could afford a 2-bedroom, you could afford a 1-bedroom. Cut to 2 years later, like Katie presented on that housing purchase slide, is the big thing you notice is the green is gone. And so this was an alarming piece of data that, when I saw this, this is what really got me to want to share this message with everyone of like, this is not a Phoenix specific issue. This is us. This is people in our neighborhoods. These are people we interact with on a daily basis, teachers, police officers, firefighters. They are now, especially if they're on a single income, they are now not able to purchase a home in any one of the Metro Phoenix large cities at any income level. You need to be making more than $80,000 a year, probably upwards of $85,000, $90,000 a year. If you'd like to purchase something, you can, if you look at Scottsdale, if you look at Surprise, Tempe, Avondale, Chandler, Gilbert, you can't afford either if you're a construction worker or a chef or a teacher. And so what that is also translating to is not just, again, that downward pressure on the housing scale, but the people that are in our communities are no longer able to live in our communities. And they're having to move out or they're having to travel farther for work. And so this is going to have longer, I think, ripple effects. And it's really affecting businesses in these communities as well, when you're not able to find employees or your employees you've had for forever are just saying, we can't afford to live here anymore.
So my favorite topic, which I spend all my time working on, is homelessness. So we've seen that ripple effect kind of into homelessness. And so we know in the last year, 19 people are entering homelessness for every 10 people finding housing. So we have almost double the amount of people coming in, and we are able to move out of the homeless system. In the last year alone, we served over 28,000 unique people through homelessness services. So emergency shelter, transitional housing, really trying to get folks moved through our system and back into housing. And on average, we see 970 new households coming in each month over the course of the last year. So we're having way more folks come in, people who have never touched the homeless system ever before. now coming into our system, and there's not a good solution. We've been pouring tons of funding into shelter, but we need more funding upstream and downstream to be able to truly address the problem. And we cannot build our way out of this. Sarah will touch on this in a couple slides, but there is so much more we need to do to be able to address the problem holistically. We cannot do it on our own within the homeless system. And so want to also briefly talk about, I think you have now heard it very clearly from both Sarah and I, timing is everything. So many people prior to 2019 have developed so much gain in their housing, but yet folks who are specifically in the younger generation are not able to build that wealth. It is much more difficult to build housing or to afford housing now if you have not gotten in prior to the bubble bursting. We also see a very strong discrepancy between race and ethnicity happening here in the region and across the U.S. As Betsy mentioned, I am very, very passionate about equity and really understanding redlining and what has happened throughout history, but also is happening still today. So we know white buyers purchase way more frequently than Black or other people of color. So we are seeing white home ownership at 73% comparatively to people of color. Black home ownership is actually on the higher end at 3%, and we have other people of color even lower than that. Lower income sale prices have dramatically increased across the region. We see evictions in lower income areas. We see rental prices increasing in lower income areas. And then back to kind of Sarah's point at the beginning, we see investor purchases in lower income areas because of that ability to purchase so much more. And we're then leading to displacement. We have so much more gentrification in our lower income areas, and we are moving folks out to the periphery. Another kind of, as Sarah was mentioning, that 30% cost burden. The second statistic we spend a lot of time thinking about is you shouldn't be spending more than 45% of your income on transportation plus your housing costs. And so as we're pushing folks further and further out to the greater periphery, they just spend that opposite in transportation costs. So even though their housing may only be 25% instead of 30%, their transportation now becomes 25% of their budget also. And so that together still makes them house burdened. So that's something that we spend a lot of time kind of thinking about and figuring out is, as we push people further and further to the periphery, does it really help their budgets? And the answer is still no.
That's a great point, Katie. Okay, and I just want to let everyone know, bear with us. We're almost done, and we're going to turn to like the happy non-data stuff soon too. But on the final zoom out, the other thing I really like to touch on is because, you know, we're talking to, especially in my position at ACF, I'm talking to, you know, people, business owners, you know, people that might not have a direct line to the crisis. And what I like to tell them is that this is not just, this is a certain segment of a population, or this is a problem that's somewhere else and it doesn't really affect me. This is an affordability issue that if we do not get out in front of it, meaning like yesterday, this is what Arizona stands to lose. $2 trillion is the cost to the country, but of that portion, Arizona stands to lose in lost wages and GDP revenue almost $36 billion, which translates into $4,600 in real wages out of everybody's pocket. It's almost 200,000 job losses that the state could experience, and almost $2 billion in lost tax revenues. So I really like to zoom out to this macro level to say, like, this is not just something that is temporary and we really hope it gets better and we wish it will go away and someone else is working on this. No, this is, it ties into the next points we're going to make of, it doesn't matter how much money or how much housing security or financial security you have, like, this is a really looming problem, this affordability issue that is going to have long-term economic effects at every level in our state. And so here's, there's no silver bullet for this. There's no one answer. There's no way we build enough shelters. There's no way, even if we had 10 $10 billion that it would solve this for us. So what we need to do right now is we need to be looking at holistically a lot of different ways to pull different levers to start to trickle out real solutions. And so I haven't seen the movie yet. It's on my list, but I call it the Everything Everywhere All at Once. So what we need to do is we need to stop the slide. So as Katie mentioned, 20 people are going into homelessness and only half are able to get out. So can we keep people in their homes as the humane solution, as the financially and economically responsible solution? Because our shelters are starting to really, swell at the seams. Can we look at regulatory reform? So what are some of the barriers via zoning that are either barriers in time, but mostly cost, that are prohibiting units, whether it be housing or apartments, to coming online, specifically in the affordable range, where affordable housing projects don't have a lot of wiggle room of going through the zoning process or paying zoning attorneys. Are there ways, like the city council in Phoenix just approved ADUs, where we could get 4,000 units built via ADUs? So can we start to look at regulation as a way to decrease some of these barriers? Can we build creatively? I've met with wonderful, wonderful people and groups that are building tiny homes. They're trying to build on church properties, school properties. The faith community is on board for this. They're looking at ways like, we have extra land. How can we build on it for our communities? Can we build on transportation corridors, affordable projects, so that everyone has what they need in their surrounding? Can we uplift community support? So can we support affordable projects? Can we use our voices? The counter to NIMBY, the not in my backyard, is the yes in my backyard. Can we start to channel some of those vibes and show support for those projects? We need varied sources of funding. So the low-income house tax credit is great. It's one of the ways that affordable housing projects around our state, the only way they get built is via this tax credit vehicle, because it helps them actually make the financials make sense for the amount of rents that they're being charged. And it's almost a form of rent control, where I look at people that live in affordable housing projects, LIHTC projects, they haven't seen any of the increases, the 30% year-over-year increases in rent. They're still paying the rent that they paid 3 months ago. And that's where LIHTC projects really are a solution here. So how can we get more of them online? Public-private partnerships. We have the Housing Trust Fund this year that the state funded about $160 million towards. And then how do we build supply? Back to that chicken and the eggs. Can we build more single-family homes, more multifamily homes, more low-income homes, lower-income homes? Like, a really diverse, healthy supply coming on market would help alleviate the back end of this problem too. So we've made it to the almost end. In summary, for you all to take away. So the highs will remain high. This Arizona 2.0, building costs, land costs, interest rates, demand. I don't see any signs and any indicators saying that we're going to go backwards to a meaningful degree. So that we have to get used to, this is the new environment we're in. We need to make two math equations align. We need supply to level in with demand to alleviate those prices and to provide more housing opportunities. And we need real wages to keep up with the cost of living. Can we pay people more to meet up with what inflation and the new cost of living is in Arizona? We need to reverse the ladder, as Katie touched on, of instead of sliding down it, can we get people back up the homeownership mobility? And then can we look at zoning and regulatory changes so that we can build denser, we can build smarter, and then we can remove costly barriers from projects coming online. And then just to reiterate again, no single solution. This is going to take you all, us all, state, city, private, public partnerships. We need to coordinate and collaborate. And then Elliot Pollack is a economist here in the state. And, in his 53 years, I took a lot of his material and I was at a presentation. He said in the 53 years of him being an economist in Arizona, this affordability issue is the scariest thing he's ever seen. And in his solution is we need to build. And so we need to start getting into that mindset of that 270,000 deficit. How can we start to meet that so that we can put pressure off of the system?
This is one of my favorite takeaways. Cities with higher rents and lower rental vacancy rates see higher per capita rates of homelessness. So Greg Colburn is a associate professor and policy research at the University of Washington. And he did all of this comparison. He did a comparison of high homelessness rates and mental health rates, high homelessness rates and the opioid epidemic, high homelessness rates and drug use, and nothing correlated except high homelessness rates and high housing costs. And you can, homelessness can be tied to everything and can be an individual problem no matter where you look. On an individual level, homelessness can be at the result of mental health or drug use or you losing your job or you having a medical emergency. But on a grand scale, homelessness is ultimately tied to a lack of housing. He uses another comparison that I absolutely love, going back to the chicken and the egg of when you're playing musical chairs and there are 10 chairs and 11 people, and yet that one person, if there was an 11th chair, they would have a place to sit. But ultimately they don't, because there is no chair. And if you ask the person, why did you lose it musical chairs, they would say, because I have a bum leg and wasn't able to get to the 10th chair. But it's because there was no 11th chair for them to go to. And so when we think about kind of some of these takeaways, I really go back to, we do not have enough of that supply and demand. We have less than a 4% vacancy rate. And so there is nowhere for people to go with the cost of living that they are having to meet, with the wages they're getting paid to be able to rent. And so we have to change that in order to solve the problem.
We are done. Thank you, Katie. I think we're now going to maybe kick it back to Betsy or open it up to Q&A, however you'd like to have us move forward from here. And while we're waiting, I can just like jump in with one more takeaway. If I know that everyone on this call, you are on this call because you are engaged and aware and active. And so at one of the last groups I presented in, they were like, we want to know the data, but like also tell us what we can do. And so I think that, and Betsy does a great job of this. Like there's so many books you can read up on housing issues, and we'll gladly send you a list, but there's a lot going on at the council level and the state level. So tuning into your city councils, to your village planning committees, seeing the housing items on the agenda, voicing support, even if it's just going in and saying, I support this project. And then also feel free to raise, find projects in your area that you might want to support, and then raise awareness to your local elected officials of, are they pro-housing? What are solutions that they're looking at? How are they coming at this problem? And really kind of make sure that there's an accountability there towards the solution side of things. We've seen, and Betsy, I'm just going to keep talking, so feel free to cut me off, but in January and July of this year, we've seen record levels of eviction, almost 7,000 people in those 2 months. And then the last high that we've had was 15 years ago in 2008. And we all know what happened in 2008. So I want to leave you with that final thought too, not as a fear statistic, but we've already seen 2 record level months of evictions. Katie and I were like, well, we have the numbers for August for today. They come out in 2 days. So I'm really curious to see where August lands us, to see, is this going to be the new normal? And I really think that helps put a sense of urgency towards why housing is directly influencing people losing their homes and not having shelter anymore. So to be continued on that, but I don't think that we've seen the worst of this problem just yet. And truly, I will still keep talking until I cut off. But happy to take questions, or if there's questions that anyone has in the chat or otherwhere too, we're here for you. Betsy and Vincent, I see your hands raised. I don't know if I'm supposed to unmute you or anything.
Okay,
There you go.
I am unmuted.
There you go.
That was a little processing problem.
No problem.
If someone does have a question, if you raise your hand, we'll be checking. And Rivko has her hand raised. Is that correct, Rivko? Can she unmute?
I think Vincent. Vincent, you have your hand?
Yes, I do. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I just wanted to ask you about, I thought that was a magnificent presentation. I'm totally scared. I'm 75 years old. I'm retired. I have a foster son with a disability, and I'm very frightened. I'm right now up around $1,400 a month in rent. But it seems, in looking at all of the components that you put forward that have to cooperate, to me, a very large component is the state of Arizona. And I'm wondering, with your experience, with your background and observation skills, how do you feel the state, let's just say the legislature, is on this issue? Do you feel that the state of Arizona, that the state legislators are up to the task? Are they committed to solve this problem? Or are they going to preside over, as you said, a state that is in severe economic crisis?
I don't know if Katie, you want to jump in on that, or you want me to?
Yeah, I can start and then I'll kick it over to you, Sarah. But first off, thank you for asking the question. I think more than ever before, I think legislators understand the level of crisis that we are at. I think previously it has been a lot of education, but not met with kind of a response. I think it is a huge step in the right direction to have $150 million in the housing trust fund. We've never had that level of funding in 1 year. I think a big shift that needs to happen is an ongoing support for the housing trust fund. So everything that we've seen for kind of the last 6 years, really ever since the recession pullback, we have not had an ongoing line item into the housing trust fund. It's always been one-time bills that have gone through and have been pushed. And so it really limits the ability for the housing trust fund to be effective because we don't know what next year will bring. So we can only put out the money that is currently in. And so as much as $150 million is everything I would have dreamed of, I would almost rather have this like consistent $50 million a year for the next 10 years type of thing. So it does make it a little bit limited. I will say one of the things that Sarah and I spend a lot of time talking about one-on-one is how do we continue that education and how do we have everybody understand the level of housing insecurity that is across the state, and really understanding that it is not a political party that this is applying to. It is not this is not really a secular issue. This is an across the aisle issue that everybody needs to be paying attention to, because nobody is more than 6 degrees away from somebody experiencing homelessness. And so we all really need to come together. I think the other thing, and I'll dovetail and come back for, I'm sure, the comment Sarah will make, is we also need to get really comfortable with some alternative solutions to housing. Historically, Arizona has always been very single family home driven, of every single person in their own single family home. We are not comfortable with like roommate pairings or smaller homes or things like that, single occupancy locations. And so we need to also start building and finding solutions that are more alternative solutions. When I first moved to Arizona, there was a study by a student loan organization, and they basically said Phoenix was the most expensive place to live as a new grad. And it's because everybody here who lives here as a new grad or who graduates and lives here as a new grad were in their own single bedroom, 1-bath apartment across the valley. And it was more expensive than a Denver or a Seattle or a New York City, because people in those other cities lived with roommates. And so we do truly need to figure out kind of where are we willing to find some of those creative solutions, and where are we willing to also build at all of the different avenues that we need to build.
That's a great answer. The only thing I'll add to that is that I describe it as a problem, kind of like water that is so bad it's good. We now see it, same with water. We see it, we see it in the streets, we feel it in our families and our community members. We're not able to ignore it anymore. It's kind of here. And so I think that there's a lot of positive opportunities. And we have been working very hard on the education front to educate elected officials. When I was down there, housing was my number one issue. Didn't see a lot of movement on it, didn't see a lot of people serious about it. But I will say, I feel good about the past 9 months that our electeds statewide in all offices are really now tuning in and facing it head on. So I'm optimistic. But these kinds of dialogues and community support and pushing people, I think, is nothing but it was great. If they hear it from us, that helps to continue the positive momentum that we can get. So that's why I just urge everyone to continue using your voices on it too.
And I would add that even though we don't have an official league position, individuals can lobby as themselves. So we can all do something. And I had a quote from Katie that I wanted to add. When you have a bunch of people saying no, and you have no one saying yes, it's difficult to get affordable housing approved. Neighbors have the power to make a difference in voicing their support for the projects in their area and helping the project through the process. And so we can start now as individuals. Now, Penny had a question about what happened to the zone and has that been resolved?
Betsy, can I touch on that last comment really quick? I guess I will continue to head nod to my own quote and also say, I think Director Service at the Department of Housing says it really well of when you're saying you don't really turn out until it's something you're against. And so there's not enough people saying yes to things that are moving forward. Like if you're okay with it, then you're going to be like, okay, great, it's going to move forward. But if you're against it, you're the people who are turning out. So we need just as many people turning up to say yes as the people who are turning up to say no. Because right now, all that councils are hearing is the few folks that are saying no and not the 95% of the people who are saying yes. The Human Services Campus, if you're unfamiliar, it is a 13-acre property in downtown Phoenix, right adjacent to the Capitol Mall, at about 13th Avenue and Jackson, just south of Jefferson Street. We house or shelter about 900 people overnight on any given night, in 4 different shelters that are available there on the campus. It is also a multi-service availability of mental health resources, food resources. There is an on-site dental clinic and medical clinic. Access to housing is kind of right there. Connection with outreach workers, kind of all of the things that theoretically a one-stop shop for how to address your homelessness. Over the last few years, we have slowly grown more and more folks outside of the Human Services campus in an encampment because there is not enough resources in the homelessness system to be able to shelter all of those folks. And it has now since become deemed the zone, which we really in the field try to stay away from, that kind of blanket term, and really refer to it as a neighborhood or an encampment around the Human Services campus. About a year ago now, the businesses around the Human Services campus sued the city and said, you have created a public nuisance around the Human Services campus, and this is not sustainable for our businesses. There is then a counter lawsuit that was filed by the ACLU saying you are not treating people experiencing homelessness with the level of intentionality and throwing away folk stuff specifically related to police treatment of people experiencing homelessness. And so these counter lawsuits have led to a lot of action. But one of the biggest actions has been all of the blocks around the Human Services campus are slowly getting shut down to camping. So the city of Phoenix has taken a block by block approach to shutting down blocks to camping. When a block is shut down, 2 to 3 weeks prior to that block being shut down, they go and notify every single person on that block who is camping, typically is anywhere between 15 and 30 people experiencing homelessness, and let them know in 3 weeks, we are shutting down this block to camping. You cannot stay here. You can choose to leave, or there will be an indoor space for you to move inside. And so over the next 2 to 3 weeks, we spend tons of time doing outreach engagement with every single person on that block, trying to get them to accept services, whether that is substance use treatment, mental health treatment, an indoor space at a shelter. Once then we come the day of the closure, we shut down the street and we go through and engage every single person and get them transferred into an indoor shelter space. So we have shelter partners across the region who have taken those folks inside. We have opened additional shelter to be able to get folks inside. We have a housing initiative in partnership with ACF, as well as some other folks, private funders who have really put a lot of housing resource into that engagement effort and really tried to move folks inside. At the beginning of this year, in end of January, we had over 900 folks in and around the Human Services campus. As of last week, it was 491 folks. We've shut 12 blocks to camping. There are still a number to go, and the city has taken kind of a block by block approach. They still have 12 blocks left. So I anticipate we will be working through the end of the year to really try to get folks inside and engaged with services, and really trying to watch outcomes follow kind of all the way through. So it's great that they took the first step into shelter or the first step into treatment, but where are they going next? And really making sure that we are getting them back into housing, especially in the economy that we're in, where a lot of folks cannot afford that housing. So I hope that answers that question, but happy to also answer additional questions. One of the common questions that we get asked is, have we seen additional encampments arise throughout the rest of the region in response? The answer is no. We actually already saw encampments across the region. Unsheltered homelessness has grown across the region, specifically in response to the lack of affordable housing. And so it has not been a direct kind of like whack-a-mole approach of somebody just moving to a different area of the city. We're just seeing more people than ever before experiencing homelessness. Then I will answer your question about.
Thank you. Sarah, did you want to add? I know you wanted to mention someone's confirmation tomorrow.
Oh, yes. Thank you. I mean, I have nothing to answer to Katie's answer. She's so thorough and accurate on all of that. I can forward maybe the email to you. I was going to try to put it in the chat, but it's too confusing and long, the message. But if I forward that message to you, Betsy, maybe you could forward it to the group if anyone wanted to tune in or voice support on it.
That would be great. Would you explain what the confirmation is?
Oh, sure. Sorry about that. Joan Service was the lead of the Arizona Housing Coalition. So she's been very integral in many facets of housing and homelessness space in the state of Arizona. She was tapped by Governor Hobbs to oversee the Department of Housing. And so she has her nomination hearing tomorrow. So she is a solid person and experienced advocate, and has the vision and is working in all of these things to help implement a lot of the solutions we talked about. And so some of you might have tuned into some of these confirmation hearings, and they're not as I know we're nonpartisan, so I'm not trying to be partisan, but they're more for show, and they're more for throwing around political weight or political theater than they are for making sure that the best person for the job gets the job. And we've lost some good people because of that. And so any support that you would want to have, or any knowledge that you have on Director Service, it always helps to add that. So you can request to speak, and you can also tune in or go to the Capitol tomorrow for that hearing.
That's great. Are there any other questions? I'm looking for a hand up.
Reach out to us anytime if a question pops up later.
This was absolutely great. Exceeded expectations. I hope that some of you who are in the audience will join the committee to work on the housing study, you can put your name in the chat right now, and we will take your name and get your contact information, and we'll find a spot for you. And you can do as much or as little as you'd like, as you feel comfortable. And one last thing, what could you tell us just a little bit? We're going to have, I hope, a forum later this fall about home is where it all starts. Would you just share a little bit?
Yeah, so they're an extension of Home Matters, and I know, Katie, you've been working with them really well too, so jump in here. But they're transforming on a very simplistic way the rebranding of what is affordability, what is the housing crisis, how do we really connect to the human side? And so in saying that a house and a roof is not just a physical structure, it is the lifeblood of people's lives and integral to our communities. And how do we connect the human side to the housing crisis there? And Katie, jump in if there's any other color you want to add to that too.
It's essentially a public education campaign of also understanding that housing means a lot to a lot of folks. I think I worked with our communications team on it, who have been integral partners. And I think a lot of folks, it's not as personal if it's not facing you. And so really having everybody understand who it is impacting. It may be, I know when I talked to our previous chair, who was the mayor of Avondale, it wasn't directly impacting him. He'd owned his home for 15 years, but it was affecting his daughter because his daughter couldn't find an affordable place to live. And so she was living at home still. And so it truly is, housing does impact everybody, and is there's a, like, the impact of 6 degrees away is so true when it comes to affordable housing and homelessness. And I guarantee it's not 6 degrees away. It's probably 2. And I guarantee it's now 2 because you now know me, and I have plenty of friends who previously experienced homelessness or are experiencing homelessness kind of every day. And so really would say that we all have to be part of the solution, and home is where it all starts really says that, like, home is the place that everything starts, and everybody has to be part of that solution, and really targeting into that kind of, yes, in my backyard, I'm okay with an apartment going up next to me, or even the neighborhood, like the house in the neighborhood being sold at a price that makes sense for the folks that could potentially be my new neighbors.
Great. Okay, any other last words? And then I think we'll wind up. Just want to again say thank you, and we will be in touch.
Wonderful.
This is where we're all in together.
We're all in it together. Yeah, thank you so much. You guys are going to be another mighty force connected on this issue. So again, I really mean that. Reach out if we can help in any way and help support any of your efforts. But I really can't thank you enough for tuning into this and getting all of your supporters and community members on this. It'll make a big difference.
Once we get the video, we will be sharing this so that other league members and friends of ours will know how important this issue is.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
I think Penny has to.
Thanks, Betsy. We can follow up with any of the materials or anything you want after this too.
Okay, that's great. We're going to have a place on our website that will have resources for people. And Penny, can you, I'm not